It sounds like you want a story rewritten smoothly without headings, while keeping the emotional weight and impact intact. Here's a refined version. Hi everyone, welcome back. Thanks for joining us today. We got a brand new story to share with you, so let's begin. My name is Julius, and if you had told me years ago that my kindness would lead to the most humiliating betrayal of my life, I would have laughed in your face. But life has a way of proving us wrong. I did my best to be the man my wife and stepdaughter needed. I raised a little girl as my own, thinking love could make up for blood. But the woman I loved, the child I helped raise, turned against me in ways I never could have imagined. I still remember the day I met Davina and her daughter, Angel. It was in a hospital waiting room. I was there for my cousin, who was battling leukemia, sitting on those cold, uncomfortable chairs, trying to keep my mind from spiraling into worst-case scenarios. That's when I noticed her, a woman sitting beside me, holding a little girl in her arms. She was stunning, no doubt, but what caught my attention wasn't just her beauty. It was the exhaustion in her eyes, the weight she carried on her shoulders. Something about her expression made it impossible to ignore. I didn't know her, but I could see she was struggling. So I asked, "Hey, are you okay?" At first, she hesitated, maybe debating whether to brush me off or actually tell me. But after a moment, she sighed and admitted she wasn't. Her daughter, Angel, was sick and needed treatment. The real problem wasn't just the illness. It was a cost. She had no one to turn to, no financial backup. Angel's father had walked away before she was even born. Now it was just her, carrying the burden alone. I don't know what it was, but something shifted inside me. Without overthinking it, I told her I'd cover the hospital bill. She froze, unable to believe what I had just said. She even asked me to repeat myself, thinking she misheard me. When she realized I was serious, her whole face changed, relief, disbelief, gratitude, all there in her eyes. She thanked me over and over, and for the first time since I sat down, she smiled. Before I left, we exchanged numbers, and then life moved on. Months passed, and I didn't hear from her. I didn't expect to. It was just one of those moments where you help someone and move on. But then one day, I received a message from an unfamiliar number. I almost ignored it, but when I opened it and saw her name, Davina, it all came back in an instant. She started by thanking me again. She told me Angel was doing much better and was about to turn 2. I replied, asking how she was, how things had been for her. What I expected to be a quick exchange turned into a real conversation. She told me about work, about the struggles of raising a child alone, about the exhaustion that never really went away. I listened, asked questions, and before I knew it, we had spent a good part of the evening texting. Toward the end of the conversation, she said something that caught me off guard. "I know it's been a while, but if you're free, I'd love to have you over for dinner." Just a way to properly say thank you. At first, I hesitated, but I told myself it didn't matter. I had done something kind for her, and she wanted to return the favor. That was all there was to it. So I agreed. That dinner turned into something much more than just a meal. It was a simple home-cooked dinner in a small but cozy apartment. We talked about everything and nothing, and for the first time, I saw her laugh, really laugh, without worry hiding behind it. That night was the start of something. After that, we started talking more. Texts turned into phone calls. Phone calls turned into late-night conversations. And before long, we were spending time together whenever we could. It didn't take long before feelings got involved. We both admitted it. We wanted this. We wanted us. I had no doubts about what I was getting into. I knew she had a child, and I wasn't just dating her. I was stepping into both their lives. But I told myself love was about actions. I had shown her who I was. I had proven I was there for her when she needed help the most. I thought that was how love worked. We didn't date for long before deciding to get married. It was a quiet, simple wedding, the way we both wanted it. For me, it wasn't about the wedding itself. It was about the commitment, not just to Davina, but to Angel too. I knew from the beginning that if I was going to be with Davina, I had to be a father to Angel. And I wanted to be. She was still just a little girl, innocent, full of life. She had already been abandoned once by the man who was supposed to be her father. I wasn't going to let her go through that again. From day one, I treated Angel like my own. I never wanted her to feel like she was different or separate from me. I was there for every milestone. I wasn't playing the role of a father. I was her father. And for years, it felt like we had built something strong, something real. For the longest time, I believed Angel saw me as a real father. She never called me by my first name, only Dad. I was her protector, her provider, and I thought that bond was unbreakable. But everything changed when she turned 13. I don't know exactly how she found out, but one day, out of nowhere, she was different. She looked at me like I was a stranger, like I had been lying to her all along. Overnight, the warmth in her eyes turned cold. She became distant, angry, defiant. It was as if she decided that because I wasn't her biological father, I had no right to tell her anything. At first, I tried to be patient. I knew teenagers could be difficult, and I thought it was just a phase. But the rebellion only got worse. She refused to follow even the most basic house rules. I told her to be home before dark. She started coming home later and later. I asked her to share her location for safety. She refused. And then there was the one rule I was most firm about: no relationships at such a young age. I knew the risks, the consequences. But to her, I was just being overbearing. She saw my care as control. The more I tried to guide her, the more she pushed back. I could feel the respect slipping away. No matter what I did, I was now the enemy. One evening, I came home from work tired, but glad to finally relax. As I walked past the dining table, my eyes landed on Angel's phone. It was right there, screen still lit up from a recent notification. I wouldn't have given it a second thought, but something made me pause. Instinct. I picked it up and opened the message. At first, I thought it was just typical teenage chatter. Nothing unusual. But as I scrolled, my stomach tightened. The conversation was between Angel and a schoolmate. It was with a man, someone much older. I checked his profile, did some quick digging, and my worst fears were confirmed. This was a grown man, clearly in his 20s, talking to my barely 16-year-old stepdaughter. Compliments, flirtation, plans to meet up. It didn't take a genius to see where this was headed. And that was just the beginning of the nightmare. Would you like me to continue refining the rest? Or is there anything you like adjusted so far? I wasn't going to say a word. Not yet. I was going to sit back, watch them play their little game. And then, when they finally try to make their move, I'd be the one holding all the cards. I came home one evening to find Angel's father sitting on my couch, legs crossed, sipping a drink my wife had probably served him. Davina and Angel sat beside him. I took a deep breath, keeping my voice calm but firm. "I want you out of my house," I said, locking eyes with the man. The silence that followed was thick, but it didn't last long. Davina shot up from her seat, her face twisted with anger. "You don't get to decide that," she snapped. Angel jumped in immediately, her voice dripping with the same entitlement. "Yeah, who do you think you are?" I let them vent, let them throw their tantrum, and when they were done, I simply repeated myself, my tone unwavering. "This is my house. You don't bring anyone here without my consent. That's final." Angel's father stood up, smirking like he found the whole thing amusing. He didn't say a word, just grabbed his things and walked out. But Davina and Angel weren't done. Not even close. Minutes after he left, Davina stormed off and came back with a stack of papers in her hand. She slapped them onto the table like she was presenting some grand checkmate. Angel stood beside her, arms crossed, a smug look on her face. "Sign it," Davina said. "You want to be done with us? Fine. Here's your divorce. Let's make it official." I looked at the papers, then at them, and I laughed. I could see the confusion flash across their faces. They expected rage, panic, desperation. Instead, I just sat back in my chair, still smiling. "Divorce?" I said, shaking my head. "From what marriage?" Davina scoffed. "Oh, don't start playing games now," she said, rolling her eyes. "Just sign the damn papers." I leaned forward, resting my arms on the table. You should really go check with your lawyer before you embarrass yourself any further, I told her, my voice calm, almost amused, because we were never legally married. For the first time that night, she didn't have a quick response. Her confidence cracked just a little. Angel looked at her mother, waiting for a reaction. Davina hesitated, clearly confused. Then, without another word, she grabbed her phone and left the room. The next morning, she was gone for hours. When she finally returned, her face was pale, her expression hollow. She had gone to see her lawyer, had done the checking, and had learned the truth. She didn't say a word, just sat down staring at nothing. Angel, still unaware of the full extent of the disaster, whispered, "Mom?" But Davina had no answers. For the first time, she had lost, and there was nothing she could do about it. Later, I sat at the dining table as Davina stood before me, her face filled with desperation. There was no doubt. She couldn't find any loophole. Finally, she spoke, her voice softer than I had ever heard it. "Julius, please, we can fix this. I made a mistake." I watched her for a moment. Now that she realized she had no legal claim to anything, she suddenly wanted to fix things. "No, Davina," I said, my voice steady. "There's nothing left to fix. I've already made my decision. You and your daughter have 3 days to get out of my house." I stood up, leveling my gaze at her. "Go be with your baby daddy." She opened and closed her mouth as if she wanted to argue, but there was nothing left to say. Angel, her precious daughter, was watching from the hallway. She didn't look angry anymore. If anything, she looked nervous, like she finally understood that actions have consequences. But it was too late for regret. The next few days passed in silence. They packed their things without a word, moving like shadows through the house. There were no more insults, no more shouting, no more fake displays of dominance, just quiet acceptance of a fate they had brought upon themselves. When the last box was carried out, I stood at the doorway, watching as they stepped outside for the final time. There was no satisfaction in their downfall, only a deep, overwhelming sense of peace. I had wasted years trying to build a family with a woman who had never truly valued me. I had poured my time, effort, and love into raising a daughter who never saw me as her father. But now I was free. I closed the door behind me. I had lost years of my life, but thank God it ended like this. People like to say that karma always wins, but the truth is, it doesn't, not always. We've all seen terrible people walk away without consequences, and good people suffer for doing the right thing. But in this case, karma did what it was supposed to do. It didn't just punish the guilty. It saved me from a life where I was nothing more than an ATM and a doormat. Some betrayals destroy only the betrayer. Davina and Angel thought they were setting me up for failure, that they would walk away with my money in my house while I struggled to start over. But in the end, they played themselves. They wanted to see me broken, but all they did was set me free.